One needs to learn how to embrace hate, not try and appease those who hate you, or at the least, dismiss those who hate you and continue to move forward. Many of you who are members of certain communities and practices despise my teachings, yet still watch my videos. Just as the prophet Balaam was dismissive towards what was expected of him, so I am also dismissive towards the hatred and disapproval I receive. A turning point, a hatred, a passion for the lies. A turning point, it changes. Tell the truth or you might die. A turning point, a hatred. I'm here to expand your mind. The prophet Balaam, or Balaam, was a real prophet called by God, although he was not a Jewish man. Despite the prophet Balaam being fully aware of who God was and still is today, he still chose to pursue his own interest. You could almost compare him to Satan, though Satan's story is far more complex. The attitudes aren't that much different. The same can be said for all others who are in rebellion. However, what an intelligent person will notice right away is that God is the one who always gets betrayed, as he has been betrayed by many. Satan, a third of the angels, the prophet Balaam, Judas Iscariot, and many others. Let's get started. Balaam, or Balaam, was a wicked prophet in the Bible and is noteworthy because although he was a wicked prophet, he was not a false prophet. That is, Balaam did hear from God, and God did give him some true prophecies to speak. However, Balaam's heart was not right with God, and eventually, he showed his true colors by betraying Israel and leading them astray. In the book of Numbers, chapter 22 through 24, we find a story about Balaam and the king of Moab, a man named Balak. King Balak wanted to weaken the children of Israel who were on their way to Canaan, had moved in on his territory. Balak sent to Balaam, who lived in Mesopotamia along the Euphrates River, and asked him to curse Israel in exchange for a reward. Balaam was willing to do this, but said he needed God's permission. Balaam, of course, had no power in himself to curse Israel, but if God were willing to curse Israel, Balaam would be rewarded through Balak. God told Balaam, quote, "You must not put a curse on those people because they are blessed." King Balak then sent other officials more numerous and more distinguished than the first, promising a handsome reward. This time God said, quote, "Go with them, but do only what I tell you." The next morning, Balaam saddled his donkey and left for Moab. God sent an angel to oppose Balaam on the way. The donkey Balaam was riding could see the angel, but Balaam could not. And when the donkey 3 times moved to avoid the angel, Balaam was angry and beat the animal. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it rebuked the prophet for the beatings. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. The angel told Balaam that he certainly would have killed Balaam had not the donkey spared his life. Ironically, a dumb beast had more wisdom than God's prophet. The angel then repeated to Balaam the instruction that he was only to speak what God told him to speak concerning the Hebrews. In Moab, King Balak, or Balak, took the prophet Balaam up to a high place called Bamoth Baal and told him to curse the Israelites. Balaam first offered 14 sacrifices on 7 altars and met with the Lord. He then declared the message God gave him, a blessing on Israel. Quote, "How can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce those whom the Lord has not denounced?" King Balak was upset that Balaam had pronounced a blessing on Israel rather than a curse, but he had him try again, this time from the top of Pisgah. Balaam sacrificed another 14 animals and met with the Lord. When he faced Israel, Balaam again spoke a blessing, saying, quote, "I have received a command to bless. He has blessed, and I cannot change it." King Balak told Balaam that if he was going to keep blessing Israel, it was better for him to just shut up. But the king decided to try one more time, taking Balaam to the top of Pur, overlooking the wasteland. Again, Balaam offered 14 animals on 7 newly built altars. Then, quote, the Spirit of God came on him, and he spoke his message. The third message was not what the Moabite king wanted to hear. Quote, how beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Balaam's 3 prophecies of blessings on Israel infuriated the king of Moab, who told the prophet to go back home with no reward. Now leave at once and go home. I said I would reward you handsomely, but the Lord has kept you from being rewarded. Before he left, Balaam reminded the king that he had said from the very beginning he could only say what God told him to say. Then he gave the king 4 more prophecies. In the 4th prophecy, Balaam foretold of the Messiah, quote, a star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the people of Sheth, end quote. Balaam's 7 prophecies were 7 blessings on God's people. It was God's enemies who were crushed. However, later on, Balaam figured out a way to get his reward from Balak. Balaam advised the Moabites on how to entice the people of Israel with prostitutes and idolatry. He could not curse Israel directly, so he came up with a plan for Israel to bring a curse upon themselves. Balak followed Balaam's advice, and Israel fell into sin, worshiping Baal of Peor and committing fornication with the Midianite women. For this God plagued them, and 24,000 men died. Now, if you all paid attention to my last video about Prince Belphegor, you will know that Baal of Peor, or Peor, was actually Prince Belphegor. That was just who he was in an earlier incarnation. But it's the same demonic spirit, his real name being that Belphegor. Balaam's name and story became infamous, and he is referred to several times in the New Testament. Peter compares false teachers to Balaam, saying, quote, who love the wages of wickedness. The Apostle Jude also echoes this sentiment, associating Balaam with the selling of one's soul for financial gain. Finally, Jesus Christ speaks of Balaam when he warns the church in Pergamum of their sin, saying, quote, there are some among you who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to entice the Israelites to sin so that they ate food sacrificed to idols and committed sexual immorality. Satan's tactics haven't changed all that much, if at all. If he cannot curse God's people directly, he will try the backdoor approach, and idolatry and sexual immorality are his go-to temptations. Some theologians dispute and disagree about the authenticity of how Balaam is viewed in biblical texts. It is said that the prophet Balaam is a secret in most areas and that his life on earth is depicted in a shady light. It is argued that in all of what you hear it isn't all true, and that there is deception that lies within it. That this deception was created and completed by the will of people to have others believe what they are told. The turning point, the hatred, the passion for the lies. A turning point, it changes. Was the prophet Balaam truly a dismissive, self-seeking prophet who only cared about his ambitions and financial gain? Did he ever at any point in his life have a heart that was on fire for God? Or did he just simply acknowledge his existence and occasionally served him out of reluctance? What were Balaam's true thoughts towards God? Did he hate God? Or did he view his ways of governing mankind as being less than sufficient? Is the prophet Balaam truly the one to blame for the children of Israel fornicating and indulging in the various sexual pleasures with the Moabite women? Or should blame be solely placed on the Jews living at that time, given the fact that they are the ones who should have used self-control? There are no clear answers to most of these questions, but I want you all to think about these questions I asked. More is to come. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.
Just saying I'm the man, facts bro, lot of haters, tell me where they at, I'm the new pop, all I do is rap.